guys, we did great. But my conflictedness has grown deeper. I told you in the earlier service that I'm going through a spiritual conflict. I'm struggling with how lost we are. And how I wish God could perform a miracle and clean all the information we have. Because it interferes with God's information. We are seriously compromised by having been involved or exposed to the world. We are worldly. We are worldly to a degree that shocks the angels. Which is why we see the word of God faintly. We read stories here and never understand what these stories actually mean. Yesterday we talked about Save the Boy Child. Earlier in the day we said the function of a man is to take his family to the future. Now I'm adding something. The function of a man is to leave a mantle for another young man. We're talking Elijah and Elisha. The question I'll be asking is, whose mantle are you carrying? Whose mantle are you wearing? In whose image have you been made? Are in the image of God or in the image of man? Is Christianity your knowledge system or humanism? Have you come to this world to consume or to give? What marks you as a significant person? Is it the fact that you achieved or that you gave? There's a distinction. Many of us are pursuing achievements and are giving nothing. 2 Kings chapter 2. We are going to die in deficit. In spite of the fact that some of us have spent years, some of us came to church while our mothers were pregnant. But we have not been impregnated by the Spirit. We are spiritually barren, refusing to be fertilized. 2 Kings chapter 2. And it came about when the Lord was about to take up Elijah by a whirlwind to heaven, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. A man must walk with another man, a junior man he can groom for the future. There's going to be a time when your life will end, your life of service will end. Every man here needs to confront that reality. There's a future of servicelessness awaiting you. Don't fool around with the time you have now, because it will end when you don't know it will end. Elijah was not born with a date for ascension to heaven. God knew the date, but Elijah didn't know. There's a man, there's a young woman, there's somebody who is following you, you don't know. There's somebody your life is ministering to, but you don't know. Some of these things we'll see when people are dead. Have you noticed that there are things we value only when they're gone? It happens. I made a strange statement to God when my father died on the 1st of November 1990. After I'd heard the news of his death, I sat down. I was in a particular office in Joburg, and I wondered, what does he owe me? The answer came like a flood. He owes you nothing. On the day of his burial, I made a strange pact with God that if he must pick one between us, my father must be saved. I should go elsewhere. Because he's the only man who never told me a lie. He is the only man in this world who never lied to me. It pains me that we live in a time in societies that tell us lies. And he's also one of the very few pastors I've known around whom there were never rumors about women and so on. Elijah is about to leave. There's Elisha following him. He says to Elisha, "Stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha says, "As the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I will not leave you." Friends, man, is there somebody here who says he will not leave you? Because you are unlivable. You are the only thing he trusts will help him cross over from here to heaven. I'm talking about mentorship. I'm talking about manhood as leadership. Not as production now and consumption, no. Earlier we talked about that. Now I'm talking about manhood as leadership. We have not been taught to be leaders because society teaches us to follow. This is a big problem. I told a camp meeting in KZN last month that I will never wear a t-shirt that has the head of another man on my chest because I also have a head. I can't have two heads. And some of these heads we hang on our chest are not as wise as we are. Whose mantle are you carrying? After whom is your life being designed? Are you a shadow of another man? So they went down to Bethel. Then the sons of the prophets who were at Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from over you today?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Be still." You know, when people know us, they can even predict the things we think they don't know. Because I'm surprised about how Elijah knows that his master is about to leave. Elisha said to him again, "Elisha, please stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." In fact, it goes to 3 places: Bethel, Jericho, and Jordan. "As the Lord lives and you yourself live, I will not leave you." Mark this. As the Lord lives. First it's the Lord, then the servant of the Lord. It's not the servant and then the Lord. There's order here. One of the beauties of the Bible is that the Bible is written in perfect logic. By the way, the King James Bible led to the death of people. When the King James Bible was written, some people lost their limbs. Some were killed. You'd be punished, even chopped with an axe or a sword, if you made a spelling error while you were translating the Bible. That's how strict King James was. He needed men who would not make errors. Some of you have read about how the Bible was written. Every morning a scribe would wake up, bathe, eat, and then dress in a clean gown. Before Moses died, he appointed a group of 300 men who were called Mezorites. When they died, new ones were added. Those are the people who kept the record of the Bible intact. We owe them a thank you for keeping the Bible. They lived to write the scriptures. Here's some of the things that they were required to do. They had bottles of ink, 2 bottles and 2 pens. With 1 bottle and 1 pen, they would write the name, the words in the Bible which are not Yahweh. And then when it gets to the word Yahweh or God, he would need to close 1 bottle and put the pen aside, and then take a deep breath while opening the bottle with the ink that would only write the word God. Pick up his pen, and he would need to hold his breath until he is done with writing the word Yahweh. Human breath was not supposed to land on that word. And today we take the Bible lightly. We think it's a novel. People died for this book. People died for this book. And that's why death is awaiting us, not long from now. Some are already dying. The sons of the prophets who were at Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take away your master from you today?" And he said, "Yes, I know." You know, people who follow us need to have certainty about why we are doing the things we do. They should affirm what we are doing. I once asked university students in Cape Town, if being followed, Babumpof, was the only method we use for evangelism, would we be willing to be followed? Because Jesus said, "Follow me." A very, very bold statement. Follow me. Are we ready to be followed as men? If we were followed, where would the journey lead to? The elder here, the leader of the Adventist men, Babu Kametse, made mention of the fact that there are acts of intemperance in the church. I need to tell you that a lot of our young men in this country, in the church, and some young ladies imbibe liquor. There are drinking clubs in the major cities of this country, Adventist drinking clubs. They meet after sunset on Sabbath. And some of the things they say is, we are relieving ourselves of Sabbath stress. I have evidence of that. That is why last night we talked about purity, overriding virginity. You remember? Yes. I was talking with Brother Tabe during the lesson time. He said, "You know, as you spoke last night, I added another rider. While virginity is not an achievement, keeping oneself pure is an achievement." So if I'm a virgin at 43, at 46, he said, I can call that an achievement. So let me tell you today, the gospel is not about improvement. It is not about decoration. It is not about a rearrangement of priorities. The gospel is about you changing into a new being. God is after transformed beings, not improved beings. Christians are not improved citizens. They are transformed. In other words, Paul says, be transformed in the spirit of your mind in the book of Philippians. We think differently. We run our lives on a new epistemology. In other words, the knowledge we use to make judgments is not that which comes from the world. For instance, the world will tell you that history runs on the basis of opposites, good and bad, light and dark, up and down, because human beings are linear thinkers. In the Garden of Eden, the struggle was not between evil and goodness. It was the struggle between goodness, life, and a mixture of truth and lies. Because that is the nature of sin. Sin is not complete evil. Sin is a mixture of evil and good, which is why a lie deceives you, because it hides next to the truth. That's why we talk of the image of the beast. And one of the factors in the knowledge system of the world says, you can't know something you have not done. Because human knowledge is not based on faith, it is based on research. That is why we research one another's bodies before we declare, I want to marry you. And women these days have also taken the cue from men. They also research us in the same way. Some of us here were damned because you did not fit the test. I don't want to tell you the contents of the test. I'm talking about guys. Why? Because many of us have over-experienced sin. We marry as first, second, third, fourth degree prostitutes. Because when we propose love to one another, we never ask the question, where have you been all along? Because you're afraid the CV might be terrible. Just as you would not want to be asked the same question. So we marry in total trust that the other person is right. Until we've tasted the pudding. Let me tell you something. Human beings were not made by scientific methods. God did not use science to design us. We are spiritual beings. There's something bigger than DNA in us. Something bigger than we cannot be defined by science. That is why the Bible begins with an affirmation. It does not begin with a supposition. It says, in the beginning, God, and you relate to him on the basis of a form of intelligence called faith. One of the problems we have in the Christian faith is that we think intelligence is an alternative to reason. No, it is not an alternative. It is the only intelligence. Faith is the only intelligence. Reason is a subset of faith. Reason handles things. It's also part of faith. It is not something secular. God gave us brains so that we can understand, but he also gave us hearts so that we can embrace. Ellen White says, our understanding of the truth depends more on the condition of our hearts than the condition of our minds. We need to be re-educated. The world has filled us with wrong philosophies. We don't understand ourselves. Do you know that all of us are aware of the fact that an orange has got segments, isn't it? An orange has got triangular segments. Is that not so? Do you know that each of those segments has a unique DNA? It is unlike other segments in the same orange. Evolution cannot explain that. Evolution cannot explain why communities that have never known one another across history have a concept of a deity. Where did this idea that there's a God come from if people were not made by God? That's why evolution begins with a hypothesis. It begins with an explosion which was not caused by anything but by itself. There's no such thing in nature. In nature, there is cause and consequence. All the time. Now 50 men of the sons of the prophet went and stood opposite them at a distance, while the two of them stood by the... Let's run through the story now. Elijah took his mantle, folded it together, and struck the waters, and they were divided. Those who follow us must see us producing miracles out of our faith. As you grow older, you need to know someone is following you. Somebody is following you. There's a story I can't forget. A man in one of these very cold countries where there is ice throughout the year decided to leave home one morning. After some time, his son noticed, my dad is not in the house. Then he stood just in front of the door and noticed that there were footmarks on the snow. He dressed up and decided to walk on these footmarks. And they led him to a tavern. On seeing the boy enter the tavern, the father stood up and said, "What do you want here? Who sent you here?" The boy humbly said, "Daddy, I followed your footsteps." Someone is following your footsteps. You don't know it. You don't know it. There is no absolutely independent life. We influence one another with the things we say and do. Also with the things we don't do and don't say. I remember standing at the door of a classroom in the school in which I was teaching in Pretoria with a cigarette on my mouth as the students were walking in to school after a lunch break. I just wanted to see what would happen. You know, all of them stood on the corridor and shouted, "Don't do it! You can't do it! You have never done it!" Why? I never told them I don't smoke. They observed my life. We teach by what we do and say. We also teach by what we don't do and don't say. There is no life without learning. This young man then says to Elisha, please let a double portion of your spirit be upon me. This was after Elisha had said, ask what I shall do for you before I'm taken from you. Listen to this. He does not say, I'm taken from this world. He says, I'm taken from you. Why? Because he's connected with him. He knows this young man has been following him all along. And he knows when he leaves, he will miss him most. An Adventist pastor was walking in a street in the US, and then he fell on the pavement. He says, as I sat in the hospital, I wondered, if I die, who will miss me? The church will employ another pastor. The community will get another neighbor. There'll be other buyers in the shops I go to. I think my family are the ones who will miss me most. He began to value his family. Because we are followed from our families into the street. They are the ones who are best at telling how we are. Archbishop Desmond Tutu tells a story of a woman who went to a funeral of her husband with a daughter. And she says, in the course of the testimonies, this woman said to the daughter, I don't think we're in the right funeral. The man they are talking about is not your dad. Whose mantle are you carrying? What mantle are you leaving behind? By the way, it's not late. It's never too late. Those who are in business know it's never too late. How old was Colonel Sanders when he started KFC? He was in his 60s, isn't it? Not 70s. Yes, 65, yes. And you are battling, and you are 25, you are battling. You think you have failed. No, you have hardly started. Take heart, there is hope. Take heart. You can still wear the mantle. Then they moved on. He said, you have asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if you see me when I'm taken from you, it shall be so for you. But if not, it shall not be so. As they were going along and talking behind, there appeared, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, and horses of fire which separated the two of them. And Elisha went up by a whirlwind to heaven. You know, I sometimes ask myself, how far is heaven? How far is heaven? In July 1977, the US launched a spacecraft called Voyager 2. It's traveling at 50 times the speed of a bullet. Going to the furthest star to the Earth. It will take 80 years to reach that star. How far is heaven? How fast is an angel? He takes less than 3 minutes to move from heaven to Daniel in the book of chapter 9. You know that. He says, while you were speaking, praying, I was dispatched to give you an answer. How fast are angels? There's a concept called time travel. Some of you might have heard of it. All of us here travel through space. That's why we're held by gravity. Angels don't travel through space. They don't deal with kilometers, they deal with time. If an angel is here and a car is about to knock you, the question he asks is not how far is that car from here. He says, how much time do I need to get to that accident to stop it? How soon did Jesus come to the fire in chapter 3 of Daniel? Had he always been there? Or did he drop from heaven at that moment? We don't know. I've heard some preachers who are very innovative say they found him in the fire. I want to argue on the basis of my reading of biographies in the Bible that he either went with them or followed them. Because God never wants you to not to experience the fire. Because you have chosen a side that the devil fights. You get the point? That is why many of us are in the fire on a daily basis. But let me tell you, there's someone else in that fire. You are not alone. There are two of you there. Amen. And that is why one of the things young men need to learn from us is that, what did we say in the Sabbath school lesson? Even if, isn't it? Yeah. The even if in Daniel 3. There must come a time in your life when God does not make sense. Then you must know you are being tried. As long as you can rationally explain what is happening, you are not in the realm of faith. You are in the realm of reason. There must come a time in your life when you don't understand why you lost that house, why you lost that business, why you lost that joy, and so on. Some of us here have gone through those things, and you can't explain how it happened. Because you can only grasp it through faith. Faith is able to explain things that reason cannot. Because reason is a fraction of faith. It is not a competitor. By faith, the worlds were made. Jesus says it is impossible to serve him without faith. And only the faithful will go to heaven. So as I close now, I'm asking the question, do you have a mantle? And on whom will you leave it? As a man, do you have a mantle worth leaving behind? Do you have a tradition worth leaving behind? In 1993, Babu Mndiri, a black educationist from the States, came here to speak in the conferences of an education, of a teachers' association. 2 days before he left, he was interviewed by journalists. They wanted to know from him what he had learned in South Africa, what he had observed. Among some of the things he said was, I was saddened by the fact that you people have not created an environment that inspires your youth to be great. And that's the nature of South African society right now. There's nothing that inspires them. Which is why many of them are rubbishing themselves with drugs and so on. We talk of Nyaoop and all these other drugs. They are telling us that you should have taught us chemical engineering in school. That's what they're telling us. A lot of the women here are walking around with big tummies. They are telling us that you should have taught us maternity science at school. We don't know that what they missed, they are now doing without any structure or process. Because we are stuck in old ways of educating human beings. We think that kids must learn the way we were taught. No. Every generation needs its own methodologies. Because perceptions change from generation to generation. And that is why we need to revamp some of the things we're doing. Some of you are mad about being master guides. Need to re-examine the master guide program. For instance, it does not deal with gender issues of justice. It doesn't. And these are the things that are current today in the youth. You need to leave people with skills, not with knowledge, who are over-informed and underskilled. And that is why we're becoming criminals. Because one thing you need to know, a hungry stomach is an angry stomach. And no one is going to allow himself to die from hunger. That's why we're going to have crime indefinitely until we fix people. Till we fix people. What are we leaving behind as men? Are we living conflict? Men have become weapons of war. We go to meetings when there is a conflict. On the other side, women go to their meetings in large numbers. Call men to a meeting, 2 will come. But tell them that we're fighting Pastor Mndiri. They will arrive. I'm being honest with you. We've been naked, devised, compromised by conflict all over the world. Men are drawn to fire. And this is one of the things we need to cleanse our young men from. There needs to be detoxification. And if we don't do it, they're going to suffer the parallel problem of being feminized by women. Because if men can mentor young men, women will do so. And let me tell you, only a man can be a father. Only a woman can be a mother. You can't be a father when you're a man. Woman, you don't have the DNA for that. That's why boys who have no fathers in the church need to see some of us fathering them. Because between 18 and 24% of the people in the church now grew up in the faith. In 2005, I read the strategic plan of the General Conference. At that time, only 26% of Adventists had grown up in the faith. The whole 74 hadn't. And they were projecting that by 2020, those who are indigenous Adventists would be 18 million, with 18%. And it's caused by us. We go around evangelizing, isn't it? We're busy bringing people in. That's why the church has got four types of people. This is my own analysis. Number one, you have your indigenous converted people. And the unconverted indigenous. And then you have the converted converts. And the unconverted converts. And then you have a fifth group that keeps meandering among these groups. Confused. They don't know where to land. This is the sociology of our faith in the church. Sometimes we think we are one. No, we don't belong to the same bracket. There are categories, genres of Adventism, spirituality. That's why sometimes the church speaks about certain things, promotes programs, and people just keep quiet. They don't move. You don't know that we are dealing with a multi-layered spirituality. And each one has got its own resistance style. What are we leaving behind? Bobab, that's the question I'm asking. Whose mantle are we carrying? His or his enemies? That's my question for us. Decide that question, the answer for yourself today. May God bless you.